All right, welcome back to the next daily drawing. Today we're going to be drawing a giraffe, so we're going to jump right into it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the body. Now, something very important, they have such long heads or neck thingies, and they have really long feet. So really important to make sure that you're not drawing the body too big, otherwise you're not going to be able to fit it on the paper. So really be mindful of how big you're drawing the body. But to get started, what we can notice first is that the body has a very diagonal look to the back side of it. It's very kind of flat in the front, and then we have kind of a rounded bottom part. So it's almost kind of like we're drawing a kind of like a rectangle, but it's a little bit longer on one corner. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a diagonal line kind of going up like this, and then I'm going to curve that down. So it's almost kind of like I'm drawing a kind of like facing down greater than or less than sign. I'm going to add a slight smile or parenthesis to the back of the body like this, and then I'm going to connect it together with a slight smile. So almost like a weird guitar pick, I guess. I don't know. Just a strange random shape. Giraffes are kind of weird. All right, so making sure that I'm leaving enough space for the head and enough space for the legs. A good rule of thumb, if you measure the length of the body, that's how high up the head's going to go, and it's also how far down the legs are going to go. So I'm going to have just enough space, so that'll work out pretty good for me. All right, so now that I have my body, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to focus on the head first. I'm going to scoot this down a little bit. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw just kind of like a stick neck thing. So something that I do want to note is that the back of the body the back of the neck is going to start here, and then it's going to go up pretty far, and then we're going to have the kind of like a triangular head before. If you drew the horse with me last time, the head's going to be drawn in a similar way. So we're going to start on the back of the body. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bump by drawing a slight frown like this. That's just going to give us our kind of like, I don't know if that's the part of the, no, this is the shoulder. So I guess just the back of the neck lump or something. I don't know, a thing there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a slight diagonal line that's going to slowly start frowning into a curve like this, so that it's not perfectly straight. If it's perfectly straight, it's going to look a little bit awkward. So allow it to be a little bit wonky. So here it's a slight parenthesis, and then it switches to the other direction is what I'm going for. All right, once I have that, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a small circle on the top. Make sure it's not too big. This is a little bit bigger than the picture because I'm going to go for a slightly younger giraffe. But if you want to draw it a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, feel free to. All right, so then what I'm going to do is after I have that circle, I'm going to start at the kind of the bottom-ish of the circle right about here. So not perfectly centered, just a little bit further off to the side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this neckline down almost in a parallel, kind of keep it pretty thin until you get across from here. And then your goal is that you want to connect it about mid-body right here. So giraffes are weird, just trust me, okay? All right, so we're going to curve down until we get to here, because this right here is going to be the shoulder kind of sticking out is what we want this to be. So the body's technically right here. This is just going to take place as part of the shoulder. All right, so we're going to focus just on the head. We're going to ignore all this confusion down here. We're going to focus just on the head at first. So we're going to zoom in here. Hello, buddy. Oh, they're so pretty. All right, so this giraffe is kind of looking away from us, so that makes the ear overlap the head a little bit. So be very mindful and keep that in your thoughts as you're drawing. If you don't like the look of that, feel free to move the ear back as though it's listening to something behind it. All right, so the first thing I'm going to start off with the head shape. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with drawing a diagonal line going down like this. Not too far, don't go too far, but you want it to be at least, if you go below the jawline, at least a little bit further down than the jawline is. So make sure it's not too short, but it's not too long, okay? Once you get to the end where you think that you want the mouth to end, you're just going to cap it off with a small parenthesis or a small smile. And then what I want to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a hook, so keep curving it up until it gets a little bit shorter right here. So this is going to take place. Notice that they have that weird bump at the bottom of their mouth like horses do. So we want to add that little weird bump. And then after we have this kind of like a dramatic smile here, then what I want to do is I want to add the jaw right here. So this giant curve is the bottom of their jaw. So it's like a little parenthesis going from the neck to that little curve thing that we just drew. So I'm going to take the head that I have here. I'm going to draw like a little parenthesis or a smile, kind of connecting the two. And I might have to add a little bit of a frown in between them to kind of connect them, okay? So I don't want that to be connected with the point. I want that to be kind of rounded. So make sure that you figure out a way that you can kind of curve that into being more of a frown. So this is going to be a wonk. So this should be kind of a smile shape, and this should be kind of a frown shape to connect it to the tip of that mouth, okay? So that part is a little bit tricky, but if you can get that, I think you can get the rest of it pretty easily. All right, so you can leave this as a perfectly straight diagonal line, so you don't have to change this, but if you do want to have a slight forehead bump, above the line right here, if you go up in the area where it's close to the forehead, if you want to add like a little bump, you can. All I'm doing is I'm just adding a little bit of a frown on here. So if you want to add a little bit of a bump to kind of make it to where there's a little bit more of a forehead, you can. Once again, that's optional. If you want to, you can erase the inside of the head like this. And then you actually can go ahead and erase all of this back here, because the way that the giraffe is looking, the jawline is actually going to be going up instead of following the curve of the head. So all I'm doing is I'm just drawing a fairly straight line going up. And if you want to make it more realistic, feel free to add some wrinkles and stuff, but I'm going to ignore that for now. All right, so now that I have my head and I have my muzzle kind of established, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and draw the lip. So right here is kind of where the lip line is going, and it's kind of making a frown. If you want to make it kind of smile at the corner, just give it a little bit of expression, you can. So I'm going to start about in the middle right here. I'm going to draw a frown to start with. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a slight smile. Right here, just give it a little bit more of an expression. So you don't have to make it smiling if you don't want to. I just really like drawing happy things. Well, in this case, I do anyway. All right, so smile like this. Very cute. All right, so for their noses, you can actually see that they're really far pushed back. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of alter, kind of like what we did with the horse's nose. I don't want to leave it super round. Now, if you're going for a cartoony aesthetic, leave it, because I think it looks very cute like that. But if you want to make it a little bit more realistic, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase the tip a little bit, and I'm just going to make it have a little bit more of a smile or a parenthesis, and then go back and touch the nose right here. So that right there would be kind of like the indentation for the nose area. So once again, optional, but if you're going for realism, that's a little bit closer to the actual shape. And then in this perspective, I don't see the actual nostrils because they are above that. So I don't see the nostrils, so I don't have to worry about drawing the nostrils. So if you are doing for a cartoony aesthetic, feel free to draw like a little C shape for the nostril if you want to, but don't have to, of course. All right, now for the next part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the ear before I draw the eye. So if I'm looking at the back, so here's where my jawline's going up. This right here is where my ear is. To start the ear, it's going to be right about here on the back of the head, right above that jawline. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw very lightly a little circle so that it helps me draw it. And then at the top of that circle, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a diagonal line going outside of the head, kind of like what we did with the llamas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it down with a really big smile like this. And then I'm almost going to get close to this area. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. And then what I'm going to do is, after I have my diagonal line for the top, big smile, almost like you're drawing the letter J. And then I'm just going to curve it and connect it to the bottom of that circle that I drew for the ear. So this is how drawing that circle is very helpful, is that it allows you to kind of measure where you're going to start the ear and where you're going to stop the ear. So afterwards, I can erase the forehead on the inside of the ear, and I can erase that circle at the bottom because it's no longer necessary now that it helped me with my purpose. All right, so that's the ear facing forward here. So to draw the other ear, if you notice in the picture, you actually barely see it. It's just back here on the back of the neck. So all it is just going to be kind of like a greater than or less than sign that's kind of curvy on the bottom, or you can say that it's like a frowny face. So I'm going to go across. So here's where I started this ear. I'm going to go across from that, and that's where I'm going to start my next ear. So I'm just going to go up in a slight diagonal line, and then I'm going to add a slight smile to kind of cap off the other ear. Because it's on the other side of the head, I don't see the full thing, so I don't have to worry about doing all of this stuff down here. All right, now something that you may not know, the giraffes have these like little bumps on the top of their heads. I don't know if they're supposed to be like horn bumps, but I think they use them to like attack. I don't know, they use them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw these as just like exaggerated frowny faces is all I'm going to do. So I'm going to start at the top of the ear right here, where the ear connects to the head, because that's what it looks like overlapped. I'm going to draw a big frown like this. There's one. I'm going to add a slight smile in between, and then draw another big frown, and there's two. And I'm just going to bring it back down and touch the head. Now they do have fluff at the top, so if you want to add like a little bit of a zigzag line around the top for the fluff, you can, or you can just leave it smooth. That's up to you. So then that right there would be the top of the head. All right, so the last thing we have to do on the head is the eye, and that's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be in between the ear and the nose. So if I go very lightly in between the bottom of the ear and the the eye is going to go right above that line right there. So if you did draw the indentation right here for the forehead, it's going to go across from there as well. So this is going to be about the location of the ear. So it's going to, or sorry, not the ear, the eye. So it's below the ear, across from here, and across from here. That's going to be the location. So the eye, if you notice from side view, is just a greater than less than sign with a little parenthesis on the front. So to draw that, all I'm going to do is actually, with my guidelines, I actually already have my greater than less than drawn. So I'm just going to copy that. So there's a greater than less than sign, like this. Then I'm going to add a little bit of a parenthesis right here. If you want to add eyelashes, you can add some eyelashes going out the front. And then, of course, as always, I'm going to leave a little highlight and then fill in the rest of it. So there's my giraffe's eye. After you're done with drawing the eye, you can erase the guidelines that you don't want. And there we go. So that's a little bit of a complicated perspective, but I thought it was interesting. I thought it'd be a cool challenge to draw. If you want to draw a little line above it for the eyelid, you can. And that can give it a little bit more of a detail above the eye, which makes it look a little bit more interesting. All right, so now that I'm done with the head, I'm going to move on down to the body. So if I scoot this back up, so goodbye head. All right, so now that I'm down here at the body, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and erase this triangle on the inside because we no longer need it. So that I just have my kind of like blob for the body. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw the front legs. So this is already part of the shoulder, so I'm just going to go ahead and very lightly draw the rest of the shoulder, which is going to be an oval. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a line down that's about the same length as the body. So if I measure the body, or actually, hold on, let me measure. Okay, same length as the neck, I guess. So we're going to measure the neck here, drop it down, which if you measured the body first, it should still be the same length. So I'm going to measure that and go down. So I'm going to very lightly draw just a stick coming from the center of that down to that line right there. Once I get to the bottom of that stick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a triangle shape like this, or like a greater than or less than sign. After I have my greater than less than sign drawn, I'm going to draw a tiny diagonal line up and then connect it like this. This is going to create the shape of the hoof. So it's a greater than or less than sign, tiny diagonal, and connect it together. So now that I have my hoof shape, then what I want to do is I'm going to draw a tiny parenthesis back here. That's going to establish kind of like the ankle area. And then I'm going to very, very carefully keep it really thin. They have like really thin legs compared to the size of their body, which I think is very strange, but they're just really strange creatures in general. So I'm going to go up about halfway up the leg, keeping it pretty thin, following this line. And then once I get about halfway up in between the foot and the shoulder, I'm going to add a knob. So I'm just going to draw a slight parenthesis. You can add a little bit of a forward knob too if you want to. And then after I add that slight parenthesis, I'm just going to connect it back up to the shoulder. So I'm just going to connect these together like this. So now I have, this is the front of the shoulder, this drops down, and that gets me the shape of my leg. If you're drawing a cartoony thing, you don't have to draw a knobby knee. It's just pretty distinctive of a giraffe, along with many other hoofed animals. Afterwards, you can erase the top of the shoulder and erase the bottom of the shoulder, but keep the front and the back of the shoulder here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my other back leg before I draw the leg that goes behind here. So something I noticed is that the body is a little bit on the short side, and if you look at this, you'll notice that the thighs are like really, really big. I think that comes to helping them be able to stand up and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, and if you notice also, sorry, I forgot to mention, see that little bump that sticks up right here? We don't have that bump on here, so we want to add that. So as I draw the back leg, I'm going to make that bump there. So if you look at it, the back leg is basically an oval that sticks out of the back of the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the top of the body here. I'm going to draw a little bit of a bump here. I'm going to draw like a really big ovally shape right here. So I want that oval. If you look at the thigh, it kind of goes down past the shoulder of this one, so the thigh is longer than the shoulder, but it doesn't go all the way to the knee, so make sure that you stop it before you get to the knee. So don't make that too big, but be careful not to make it too small either. Now, to help make this not look so awkward right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the top of the back, why did I say that in a weird accent? The top of the back of the body to that shoulder line so that I have a more natural feeling curve to the spine so it's not like all weird. All right, so now that I have that, I can erase the inside of this weird little triangle thing. Oh yeah, we're starting to get a giraffe looking body. That's cool. All right, so now that I have my thigh, I'm ready to do my legs. So I want to go across from here. That's how far down my foot should go, okay? So keeping in mind that that's where the location of the foot's going to be. And if I go down from the back of the leg, that's where the foot should line up. So I'm going to go down here, right below the back of the leg. That's where I'm going to draw my hoof. So I'm just going to draw the same shape that I did before. So that kind of like a greater than or less than sign with a weird little diagonal line at the back. Almost like a weird trapezoid or box type shape. Fill it in. Add a little bit of that ankle bump, or wrist bump, whatever that is, the little parenthesis on the back. And then this is pretty distinctive though. We want to have the ankle itself. Notice that the ankle makes it kind of have a curved shape back here. So I'm going to go across from my knee, right here, go across from the knee. And then that's where I want to have my ankle. So I'm going to put a little dot right here. So this should be a little bit further out, or either that or right below this line. Somewhere close to that, we need to have that dot. So don't go like really far out because that's going to look super weird. But pretty close to this range right here, we need to have a little dot for the ankle. So to connect this all together, so we're just going to ankles across from the knee, is I'm going to follow the flow of the back of the leg. And then I'm going to curve it in a parenthesis out to the ankle like this. And then once I have it curved out to the ankle, I'm then going to draw a diagonal line or a straight line, however you need to connect that down here to the foot. Once I have it connected to the foot, all I'm going to do on the inside piece is I'm going to start on the inside of the thigh, do a gentle curve down until it gets across from the ankle. Oops. And then once it gets across from the ankle, I'm just going to curve it down until it connects to the hoof. So starting inside the body, right about here, follow that curve of the thigh, extend it past the thigh until you get across from the ankle. And then once you get across from the ankle, just curve it down until you touch the foot. And that'll make the shape of the back of the leg of the giraffe. And feel free to make it thinner or a little thicker if you made it too thick. And then after you're done, erase the inside of the thigh and erase the top of the thigh. But once again, leave the inside of the thigh a little bit because it's pretty distinctive and we need to see it. All right, so now I have the half of my legs done. For the other side of the legs, it's kind of overlapping. So on this one, it just kind of comes straight down. It's going down until we see the hoof here, and then it goes back up. The knees are still across from each other though. So I'm just going to very lightly draw a line so I know where I'm going. I'm going to go ahead and draw the hoof. Now, the reason I'm drawing the hooves first before drawing the rest of the leg is it makes it a little bit easier to get everything lined up, especially with something this long. So draw the hoof shape, draw the parenthesis in the back. If you want to, you can go ahead and draw the knees first, and that might help too. So that way you just have to play, like, connect the dots. So here's my knees. They're just across from the others. And then I just go down, connect it, go up, connect it, and we're just going to go up until it touches back onto the body. And then once we're done, we can erase the line in the middle so that I know that my foot and leg is ready. And of course, as always, you can kind of tweak it a little bit until you're satisfied with the shape of it. I'm sorry, my dog's barking. All right. Now with this other leg, we can see part of the thigh back here, but most of it's kind of going to the front and makes a diagonal line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across from this ankle, make a diagonal line like this, and then I'm going to draw my foot. So the foot's kind of the same shape that we had before. Slight parenthesis on the inside. And then I'm just going to draw a line, connect it to this leg, and then a line and connect it to this leg. And then erase the inside. And then you might be able to see part of the thigh back here that goes up like this. So I'm just kind of following the same kind of curve that this thigh is making, going up to that area, except the tail is going to kind of like break that up a little bit. So I wouldn't fully connect it. If you want to fully connect it, you can, but I wouldn't fully connect it just to make it easier. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw the tail. So the tail is going to come out of the back of the body like this. It's going to drop down like this. And then it's going to have a big poof at the end of it. So I'm just going to draw a curvy teardrop at the end for the tail. Now, you don't want to leave it as just one line. I've drawn this thigh a little too high, but I'm going to erase that. So what you want to do is you want to actually draw very thin at first, a parallel line going back up until you touch the top of the thigh right here. Once you've touched the top of the thigh, you can stop. You don't have to carry it all the way up to the spine. It's actually better if you leave a gap right here. That way you can actually tell where the tail is. Funny. All right. So if you want to add some like little poofs or lines on the inside of the tail, you can, kind of like what we did with the horse's mane, if you want to add some poofs and stuff to it. All right. So that's pretty much it for the drawing of the body and stuff. The rest of it's just drawing like the shapes and patterns, which the great thing about art is that you can do any kind of shapes or patterns you want. So if you want to do more fantasy shapes like hearts and stars and like whatever you want to on the inside, you can. If you wanted to keep it kind of natural shapes, if you look at these shapes, they're really, really random. They're mostly like curvy boxes or like weird triangles, kind of like odd shapes. There's a heart. Oh, that's cute. There's a heart there. This one looks kind of like a spade. So really, really random shapes. The key thing though, if you look at the face, they have slightly smaller shapes. On the neck and the body, they have bigger shapes. And then as they get closer to the feet, they get smaller again. So that's the only thing that you really have to pay attention to is just the shape of it. Oh, we forgot the mane. Okay, here. Sorry. Okay, one more thing before you can actually officially call it done is they have that little mane going down the back of their necks all the way down until it gets right there at the end of that shoulder bump. So to do that, I'm just going to draw starting up here by the horns. I'm just going to draw a line going down all the way until I get to the end of the shoulder bump. And I'm just going to very lightly draw kind of like a wiggly line going back and forth, following that neck like this. Wiggle, 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 until I get up here to the horns. Once I get up there, I'm just going to erase that inside line. And then I'm just going to add the texture of the fur. Okay, so the fur is going out from the neck. So I want to just kind of like draw little lines. And they don't have to be fully touching. You can just draw like tiny hatch lines if you want to. Just like little lines kind of curving towards the inside of the neck, like this. Just to give us a little bit of a texture on the back. It almost kind of was like a zebra fur on the back of their hair, neck things, whatever they're called, the mane. And there you go. You got the texture of the neck. And if you want to make this a little more realistic, just get rid of this bottom piece that we drew. And then add a little bit of more of a fur texture on there. And that can give you a little bit more of a realistic neck look to it. All right, totally almost forgot that. Good thing I zoomed in. That was really small and hard to see. All right, so if you're wanting to create just kind of like random shapes, just really honestly just be random with it. Key thing though, leave a gap in between. They shouldn't be physically touching. There should be a gap in between. So I'm just going to draw a bunch of really random shapes, kind of like following the curves that make up these shapes. And do not have to draw the same shapes I'm doing. I'm just making extremely random shapes. Do pay attention that these shapes get smaller as they get on the head. Some of them actually don't even have them on their head, I don't think. So just really random shapes. Yes. I always thought giraffes were like so weird because it's like they're a horse, but they're not a horse, and they're like really long necks, so they're kind of like llamas, but they're not llamas. And then they have like really heavy bodies, but then they have like these extremely long, thin legs. Have you ever seen a giraffe drink? They like do the splits when they're drinking, and I think that's so weird, and it just cracks me up every time I see like a video of it. I just think that's like hilarious. So I don't know. So yeah, so here is just a couple dots. I'm gonna leave the legs fairly pale just to make it have a little bit more contrast and stuff. So there we go. All right, so here's some shapes and stuff on my am I calling it a zebra? I feel like I just called it a zebra. I don't know, I got confused with that whole mane situation. But yeah, so there's my not zebra, there's my giraffe. If you want to add a little bit of shading and stuff to it. Now, I think these would be super fun to draw. I am not going to shade every single one of these things in because that would take forever. And I'm sure you don't want to just sit there watching me shade in shapes. I'm just going to shade in some of the top ones, and then I'm going to shade in the parts of the body that I think should be shaded. Especially with giraffes, we can have a lot of fun with their designs and stuff. You can have all sorts of cool patterns and stuff. I've seen, what was it, like, I think it's like a myth or a legend or something in, Africa, where it's like the giraffe like eats the moon, and that's how like the moon like slowly goes away or something, like it's waxing and waning. Which I think it's a pretty cool story. But yeah, so you can do like some cool stuff, like maybe it's like checking out the moon. It's like, that's a tasty treat. Wow, that's a weird looking moon. But anyway, so you can have all sorts of fun with giraffes. I just think they're such cool creatures. They're just really weird. All right, so I think I'm gonna call it done. At that point, I really like how it turned out. There's some things that I probably should still be able to do, like some more shading and coloring and stuff, but I think that turned out pretty nice. All right, I hope you guys had fun, and if you need any help, just let me know, or if you know what you would like to draw next, leave it in the comments below. Thanks. All right, have a good day. Bye.